Today, we're looking at a red ink by Kaweco, Ruby Red. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so that if you're in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, check out the entire video. Also, if you're interested, you can follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. I do a new ink review daily. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then inked up this Fountain Pen Revolution Himalaya with a flex nib, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take the notes for this video. This first writing sample is done with a standard set of paper, Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Now, there are additional writing samples that will occur later. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in cartridge form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X 450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is just a tad lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Medium is lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 14 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we're not getting any. Tomoe River with no bleeding and normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, just a little bit, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. Medium is lighter than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 22 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we don't get it. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. Extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 10 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 14 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we didn't get any. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a prime red that runs away from the water and gathers at the top. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And it's basically the same, although yes, there is a little bit of red being left behind as it's working its way up. You'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between the two of these without marking your filter paper. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I'm incredibly surprised how well this did, having seen the chromatography. But it completely held together. It went from about a fine to a medium there. Okay. But I would feel safe using it in a note-taking situation. Look at it. I'm shocked. Especially when we look at what happens with water, where it gets completely reactivated, lifted off the paper in only 30 seconds. Now, with that, pen flush did exactly what water did, and the 1/3 bleach solution, of course it removed it. I test viscosity or flow with a thing called a tilt test. I'll link it somewhere down below or up in the cards. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Kaweco's Ruby Red has a viscosity of 1.45, making this a very wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Kaweco's Ruby Red has an average dry time of 15 seconds. Despite it being very wet, its dry time is normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Kaweco's Ruby Red, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice blue-black, and I chose Noodler's 54th Massachusetts. The second writing sample is done on Franklin-Christoph and black and red paper. What we're seeing right here is Franklin-Christoph paper. Now, this is not bleeding spots here, that's me being sloppy at that time of doing it, but we get no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get any. And black and red notebooks with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we didn't get it, and that's all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Kaweco's Ruby Red? Well, it's a solid performing red that doesn't shade a whole lot. The biggest issue I run into with this ink is since I tend to use Kaweco inks in my pocket pens, I probably won't be purchasing more of it. This isn't a color that I tend to just carry around with me all the time. It's a good performer, just this isn't an ink that I find a great deal of use for. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? A very dry pen makes it look much more pink in tone, but a medium to wet pen puts down a much more pleasant tone, even though it doesn't have any shading. I'm going to remind you that I'm here every day with a new ink review. Thanks for watching.